Hello, fam, friends. Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, NBs, to Warui Deshou's Deshou the Third. It is our not first, not second, but third watch along series where you, the patrons, the highest form of patron life, the most advanced and highly evolved Viking experience
You're not
tier.
getting stage of a Pokemon chain here, John. For God's
They are.
sake.
You are the Charizards of our patrons, and
I'm glad you said that. If you just said like they were a Raticate or whatever, I'd have thrown you off this podcast. No one wants a fucking shit Raticate as a Pokemon. Like, oh no, he said a Raticate. Whatever will I do? Get off your little pipsqueak.
yeah, no, Raticates are annoying and bad, and I hate because they're so common. Just like, oh god damn it, another Raticate. Hello, Go Atomic Robot. Hello, Mirror on the Wall in chat, and everyone else who's maybe tuning in. Grateful to have you guys, and yeah, so we're here to talk about Rakugo, but who are we? I am, as usual, the subtle doctor, one of your hosts, and my colleague here, my esteemed colleague, along for the ride as always, is the guiltiest gear, the hardest working man in pod business, the shiny clock wizard, Shadon.
That's a new one there. But yeah, good evening, everyone. Hope you're all doing well.
Everybody send your Genkai Damas, hold up the arms for the old spirit bomb and send the good energy to Mr. Shay D. Donington over there because he is having a pretty shitty time this week and he deserves some good feels, some good vibes, and hopefully talking about this modern classic anime, Showa Genroku Rakugo Shinju, will help be a balm to his soul and ease his woes and help him get through the shittiness that we can all commiserate with because it's shitty times right now. But if you could all just throw some love Shady's way, I would appreciate it. He would appreciate it, and it would not go amiss. Shadon, are you ready to rack some goes?
I thought you were going to say Rakugo Your World then. And I'm like, well, that's the next pickup line I'm using.
Yes, let's rack a go to my place. Hey.
Well, that's exactly what happens in this section of episodes, it turns out. So
I
it's
know.
actually really appropriate.
It's true. So because this is going to be like second stream style, we're not going to do any plot summaries. We're just going to get right into the good portion of the meal, the meat of discussion. And we usually will answer patron questions first, but like I don't think we have any this time. I looked like right before we started, so in case, I mean, maybe some came in. Feel free to ask us some in the chat. Feel free, patrons, to pop some in the channel on the Discord, and we can get to them at that time. But as for now, excuse me. As for now, we have none. But that's okay, because this set of episodes, 4 through 6, presented us with the opportunity to talk about a lot of different things. But before we get into that, a couple of items. First, we know that some of you are listening to this later on the free, which is great. We love you. You're valid. We support you. But if you are saying to yourself, you know what? I'm tired of listening to this on a delay. I don't want to feel like a second class citizen anymore. I want to be part of the discussion. I want to
You
get
want to be
in.
a fully evolved Pokemon.
I want to be a fully evolved Pokemon. Like, get me in there. You know what I mean, lad? And so head on over if you feeling this way to patreon.com/waruideshou, WARUIDESHOU, and check out the bounteous selection. Is that bountiful? I think I meant to say bounty. a feast. There's a buffet table. It's a feast of rewards for you for any budget. There are $2, $3, and $5 tiers. This particular podcast is for the $5 tier. You pay $5, you get this podcast, and you get access to every single thing we do. Whether we do one-time things, whether we do series, requests, polls, discords, watch-alongs, movie nights, game nights, it's all there for you. Read the fine print over at patreon.com/waruideshou and sign up today. But before we get to the big content type discussion, let's talk about some creators. I feel like I need a sound drop. I was going to go, let's talk about some creators. But that's news. That's not a sound drop that you're supposed to do for talking about creators. Like, what's
It's been 4 years since Showa Genroku Rakugo Shinju came out, and we only finally now learned who actually made the show.
The news.
We had to like, you know, excavate it from like a deep archaeological site. Many translations were required, but now we do know actually who made this show. Possibly. We do want to take a minute to tip our cap and acknowledge the episode directors and the screenplay writers very quickly. So episode number 4 was directed by Fumihiro Ueno, who, as I'm scrolling through their talk about Bountiful, the CV here of Ueno-san. We got like episode direction on Blackjack. Looks like this is not young Blackjack. This was like the OG Blackjack TV, which is cool. Gatchaman Crowds, excellent show, directed by Nakamura of Welcome to Arabu-san's Office, Trapeze fame. Yes.
Pokemon Sun and Moon, to tie it back to the bit we just did at the beginning. Director. Yeah. And the anime with the sketchiest sounding title that I've heard from every single person that watched it, that it is good and amazing and not skeevy as it sounds. Maria the Virgin Witch. Ping Pong the animation. Good old Masaki Yuasa's Ping Pong. And Shadon's favorite anime, Magical Meow Meow Taruto.
It's out of the open on air now. All recorded for posterity. That is my favorite show that I've never talked about. God, I've been playing a lot of this just sounds like a weird tangent, but I've been playing a lot of FF7 remake this week, finally. And there's of course many scenes in that where Cloud has a massive headache because he's like got his all mind jumbled up from events in the past. And like when you said that particular show, that's what he was like
the really high pitched sound effect and the flash of light. Yeah. That sound always really hurt my ears. Like, I mean, I wouldn't even be playing with headphones. I'd just be playing on an old CRT, like with the mono little speaker at the bottom, and it would still really hurt my ears. I hate that sound.
It means that someone, like, you know, I mean, in that game, like, Sephiroth is, like, you know, clearly fucking up his head. But I have an alternative interpretation, which is that someone's just really, really badly tuned an amp that they're constantly wheeling behind him all the way through the game.
I like
it's like it's like if you ever try to plug in a 3.5mm audio cable and you get a brrr, brrr, brrr noise. It's like that.
Are you saying that the main character, the protagonist of Listeners, what was his name?
Doesn't matter. The fact that I can't remember no one gives a shit about that anymore. Who cares? Fuck that show.
It's like he's not called Renton. He's not called Amp Boy. What is he called?
Well, no. Actually, we could call him a low Renton because he's a low-grade copy of Renton.
Oh, low Renton. Low Renton. Oh my God.
His name was actually Echo.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, but back on task. The director of episode 5 was Tomoe Makino, who has worked on, let's see, some key animation of the anime adaptation to the sequel to Shadon's favorite visual novel. The visual novel being The Fruit of Grisaia, the sequel being Eden of Grisaia. Key animation there. We got some episode direction on Pokemon Sun and Moon again. It's the Pokemon crew coming together. But listen, it's probably one of those things that there's so much Pokemon. It's like, who hasn't worked on Pokemon, maybe? That could be the deal. Although I thought OLM was a little bit more of a closed shop. But second season of Konosuba, a thing that people really, really like, fantasy comedy show. Got some key animation and animation direction there. Episode director of the fourth season of Haikyuu to the Top, the recently ended, long-running, amazing volleyball manga that we are going to cover the first season of on the show as part of a patron request. Look forward to that in the future. Was something called the unit director for episode 7 on Recovery of an MMO Junkie. I don't know what the unit direction involves, but it doesn't sound fun.
There was clearly an animator who was an absolute unit of a man.
You stole my joke. It's like, go over here. Now go over here. Oh, God. Episode 6 was directed by Naoki Murata, who, let's see. I'm seeing a lot of things. I'm like, this seems pretty meh, but we got a Carol and Tuesday episode direction. Episode 14 of that. We have, a Hitalia credit. Or, sorry, Hitalia, however you say that. Man, remember Hitalia? Remember when that was the biggest shit in the world? And, like, God, when was this? This is probably, like, 12 years ago, something like that? 15? Or maybe closer to 10? I don't know. But do you know what Hitalia is, Shadon?
If it was 10 or 12 years ago, I was probably drunk throughout all of it, so I therefore must have missed it. So please do enlighten me.
Well, it was, like, just, again, especially in, I think, the, like, American convention scene, it was so big. It's just this anime where all the countries of the world are personified as people. And they have their hijinks. Lots of hijinks they have together. The show is called Hitalia Axis Powers, by the way.
Wait, did you say access or axis?
The latter. AXIS.
So axis.
Yes, as in the group of nations that were the baddies, the fascists in World War II. But I don't think it was fasci. I mean, I think the thing was started by like one lady in New York doing the comic by herself. But it turned into something, I don't know. It really, like, it's just, to do research into the Italia fandom. I don't know if anyone in the chat, I can't see chat at the moment, is talking about this, but, yeah, I'm just now seeing Emily making fun of my British accent, so thank you.
Well, I was going to say, if ever there was an English dub, then clearly you were the person who did the dub for the various countries because of your ability to access for all of them.
just like the same character slipping into all kinds of accents. You sound like you're a northerner today, from the north, but now you're Cockney. Like, what's happening?
Probably sound more British than I do, mate, to be fair.
No, I don't know. That can't be. Okay, we got a Kisniver credit. That's a very popular Trigger thing. Episode 4. And I've mentioned Rosin Maiden on this podcast before, so this person who directed episode 6 of Rakugo also directed 3 episodes of Rosin Maiden. And let's see. Oh, I should mention that this person not only directed episode 6 of Rakugo Shinju, but directed episodes 3, 8, and 11. So that's Naoki Murata. Also, Zammed Lost Memories. There's an episode direction credit in there. That's like a sort of forgotten sci-fi property of the late aughts. I need to revisit that and sort of reevaluate what I think about it. I think I saw it too close to Erica 7, and I was just like, this is okay, but there's no Erica 7.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, that's an unfortunate time to have been released. Like, you just say, like, you prep this anime, you work really hard on it, and then you just lay out there, and then it's like there's a skit from one of the Naked Gun films where Frank Drebin's coming down the plane stairs, and everyone's like, oh, everyone's like cheering, and he's just like waving at them, like. And then of course, I forget his name, but his partner says to him, Frank, they're not actually cheering for you. They're cheering for Weird Al Yankovic, and it's just Weird Al Yankovic coming off a different plane entirely. Like that's the same thing. Like you put the anime out at the same time as Erica 7. It's just there's no point. Like you fucked up. You should have held it. You should have left it on the shelf for a bit.
Hold off on this release.
Hold it. Yeah, leave it till 2009, the desolate, barren wasteland of a year for anime.
Oh, was that the Phantom Requiem for a Phantom year?
No, that was the Akiken year, which is worse.
I think Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood might have started that year, so that was a sort of redeeming quality of it.
Give a shit because it's that, but
listen, Full Metal Alchemist is good. One day you'll know the truth of that. We'll quickly now talk about the writers here. Very interesting. Like, so the scriptwriter for episode 4, or rather the screenplay writer, I should say, Anime News Network lists it's Yasuhiro Nakanishi lists them as a manga artist first and foremost, but I don't see the manga credits. So maybe I'll have to look into that a little bit more, or someone in chat can fill me in. But so the writing CV is pretty good here. Did the screenplay for several episodes of this season and several episodes of the second season of Rakugo. Has written a screenplay for a Digimon Adventure Try film. Working on Bang Dream stuff. Both seasons of that. Wrote 5 scripts for Carol and Tuesday. Which some really great writing in that show. It was pretty cool, I think, to work with Watanabe-san on that. And is credited with being the head writer of 2 very popular things that have come out recently. Kaguya-sama Love is War, seasons 1 and 2 of that. And Toilet Bound Hanako-kun, which I have seen, and which is fantastic. Again, title, very bad. Very bad title, but it's a great show.
Yeah, I mean, if I introduced a couple of my normie friends, if you want to call them that, said, okay, what do you think that, I'll give you the title, Toilet Bound Hanako-kun, what do you think this is about? And they'll probably say, what, is this a laxative commercial?
What this can only be bad, basically. This television show.
Yeah.
So episode 5 and 8 as well, screenplay written by Toku Machida. And Machida has got a really long CV. Oh man, Comet Lucifer. I remember Comet Lucifer when people were like, "Oh, Comet Lucifer's going to be so good," and it kind of fizzled out. But they wrote.
Some listeners of that time, then.
It kind of was. It kind of was a science fiction thing, and people were like, "This is really fresh and seems like cool and like." New and original, and it just didn't, I don't think, amount to too much of anything. We got some Boruto action going on. Boruto, Naruto Next Generation TV. Script of 7 episodes of that. Something called Caligula TV. He's the head writer of Caligula TV.
Whatever happened because of or about Caligula. I'm just going to put that out there.
Holy shit.
I mean, you ain't seen Caligula being turned into a fake granddaughter servant anytime soon.
No.
Oh my god.
Got a Danganronpa writing credit for some scripts of that TV animation. Hamatora, Hamatora. This is the head writer of Hamatora. We've talked about this before. I feel like, well, maybe we talked about this person before then. Head writer of a TV anime called Carnival, and bearing the lead here, okay, wrote a couple of the scripts for Macross Delta. So, boom. Also, Pokemon Journeys, more Pokemon. Nobunaga the Fool, some scenario writing there. That was a fun show. And there's like, there's just this person has been in Wug prison. Oh,
Wait, what?
This person's been in Wug prison, slaving away under Yamakan on Wake Up Girls, Wug.
Oh,
The head writer and script writer for like all these Wug properties. My condolences to you, Machida-san. You poor lady. And finally, the scriptwriter for episode number, or the screenplay writer, I keep getting that wrong, for 6 is Yuko Kakihara. And Kakihara-san also working on Bang Dream, also done a fair bit of work as a head writer for Aikatsu, which is, if you're into the magical girl properties, not the subversive ones, this is a straight ahead, let's appeal to young girls in the way that Precure does. If you're into those kind of things, you know about Aikatsu. It's huge. Head writer for all 3 seasons of Chihara Furu, which is an incredibly good, like, I want to call it a sports anime, but it's not really, because it's like about sort of traditional Japanese, a game revolving around like poems and memorizing poems. That sounds like the farthest thing from exciting, but when you see it, it's
these rap battles.
It's Japanese
rap battles.
Oh, no, it's like I can't. It's like so they're all these are poems called. I did it. I hit the pot filter. Poems called karuta, and all these different karuta are laid out on cards in front of the players. And someone starts reading the poem, and as soon as you recognize it, you're supposed to slap the card, and you get it, and it's like that kind of thing. It's very niche, very, very niche kind of game, I think even in Japan. But the animes are just, they're so good. So, oh my gosh. This person's worked on some incredible stuff. Script for Kids on the Slope, it's other Watanabe, great thing. Talked about like the Magical Girl. We got some fresh Precure in here, but then we have some like just balls out weird like Gonagai mecha, like Kotetsujin G, which is really cool, like revival property. Gonagai revival. This is the person who's the head writer for the Orange adaptation.
That's immediate big kudos from me. You'll tick. Still approval there.
Yeah, wrote the script for the movie Persona 4, the animation, not the golden one, but the vanilla one.
The good one. Oh. So the one that actually made substantive changes to try and make the story better.
Oh yeah, so that's the original one, right? That you like.
Yes.
I can never remember if it's golden or vanilla that you prefer for those reasons, because I haven't seen those adaptations, but I definitely should. And I know some people will be mad if I don't mention that this person wrote a script for Space Brothers. So those are the directors and writers we're dealing with. And I have to say, after looking at a lot of those CVs, like it's like their talent is coming through. These are some really, really good episodes, and some really talented people help make them.
Cool.
Now,
all right. Well, I suppose, but yes.
Passing the mic to you so that we can talk about the episodes and we can really get into it.
Excellent. Well, my very first talking point is actually to do at the very beginning of episode 4, as it turns out. So I have a question for you, Doc, because I like throwing these out there just to make sure you're still awake. Which is this. How do you, in a story, show the passage of time?
You show a clock on the wall and you fade into the hands being in different places.
Either that or you throw spinning newspapers at it on the screen.
Exactly. You show like a pile of papers piling up because the person hasn't come to get their paper. It's like, look.
No, I mean like the spinning newspaper guy from The Simpsons.
Oh, okay, right.
Mm-hmm.
But no, tell me the real answer.
Well, the thing is, your answer was correct. Just to backtrack a little bit, this is something that I mentioned when we did our Sing Yesterday For Me podcast, the very final one, where I said you know how that final episode like felt like it was going on fast forward and suddenly skipped through different time periods
Hmm.
because they were missing like this label at the bottom that said like 6 months later or something like that. And that's what my suggestion was for what they should have done to try and at least make it clear to the audience that no, literally, like Rico has not literally just like said Shinako, right, off you go. I'm gonna go and get me some hot Raven action. No, anyway. But the thing is, right, that is appropriate, I would argue, for that setting. But why am I bringing it up here in relation to Showa Genroku Rakugo Shinju? Because if you recall, the end of episode 3 was the end of World War II.
Yes.
And of course, the reuniting of the two leads and their master, Kikuriso and Shirakuku. I'm going to try and remember their names here. I'm probably going to make a complete butchery of them again. But anyway,
It's tough.
Sukeroku there.
Yeah, here's my trick, and I will share it with you in hopes that it will help you as well. I'm going to try to just stick to 2 syllables of each of their names as if I am affectionately calling them by a nickname. So I have Kiku, Suke, and Mio. And I think,
I think that's Suka. Then I'm like, no, that's rude. You can't call him a Suka.
so, no, I would never call Sukeroku a name,
Okay.
except for a mooch and a lazy layabout bastard.
Yeah.
No. He's, I mean, he is that, but
blood type B for booze.
yeah,
Okay, but anyway, so there are times in stories when it is appropriate and welcome for there to be like a 6 months later thing. If you want a high profile like pop culture example of that, you had, of course, big spoilers by the way, but fuck it, who cares? Avengers Endgame, where suddenly it's 5 years later and then like snap. I don't know why Doc's putting his hands over his ears. He's got his headphones on.
oh.
It doesn't help you. It doesn't help you in the slightest.
It was just a gag for those at home. I don't care about being spoiled on Endgame on any Marvel property.
But the thing is, like, that's a common way of doing it, and I'm not saying it's a bad way of doing it. But there are other ways in which you can show the passage of time in for more other settings where it's more suitable. So what do we see in the opening part of episode 4? We see that Kikiso is actually working at a French restaurant. Now, again, put that in terms of historical context for what we're looking at here in Showa Genroku Rakugo Shinju, which is that this is the end of World War II. Like, this is the post-war reconstruction phase. They've since moved out from the master's house. They're now living on their own. And I think this is actually really, really genius on this show's part and the material's part to do it this way, rather than having a 5 years later thing. Because what this show is trying to get across here is how Rakugo has kind of changed over time, and how it, in addition to, of course, it being a very intimate character story. And so I think that marking the passage of time, not in terms of like sheer raw years, days, months, etc., but rather as a cultural drift, I think that's really, really clever on the show's part, because it shows like how the world around them is changing. Now, I need to add some historical context here as well, in that Japan, like, this wasn't like end of World War II and suddenly all Western influence is going to be felt everywhere. Like, obviously, it's a lot more granular than that. And even then, like, I think that Japan, from the brief, like, research I've done, was only truly isolationist up until around the 1860s, I think. It was around about that time.
Mm-hmm.
I think they only let, like, a handful of Dutch, like, traders come in at one point. And then, other than that, it was like, all right, you're a gaijin. You can, like, U-turn now. Fuck off. Don't come back. So I'm not going to pretend, of course, that like that was always going to be the case, but like I'm willing to think, as far as I understand it, that obviously with World War II going on, like access to like foreign cuisine and such was probably at an absolute premium if allowed at all. And from what I have read, like the common person couldn't get a hold of like going to a French restaurant like that. So
yeah,
I like how that serves as a really nice like reminder of what the show is about on a very subtle level, which is about how culture has changed over time. Because Rakugo, in a cyclic way, is part of that, where it will feed back into itself, but also draw from the environment around it, same as with a lot of other things. On top of that, it's also a really nice character moment for Kikuiko as well, because he is now working there as a means of trying to get out of his comfort zone. And, well, you're in a foreign culture with a foreign language of sorts in this French restaurant, which is why they have the garçon thing going on there.
Right.
They're buying into this.
Boy-san.
So
sounds like this.
Yeah. Where he's got his little fangirls, his group.
Yeah.
His group there. So I really, really like how this block of episodes, like post-war, sets up how things are changing in Japan without making it like blatantly like 15 years later kind of thing, which that would have been okay, but this does it so much better in my opinion. and it will feed into how this block of episodes how Kikuo so like he changes and how his performances change as a result, and how they start blending in like different kinds of material here and being a bit raunchier as well.
Yeah, waste no time. Treating you like
Appropriately.
right. Yeah, treating you like you're not an adult, right? I mean, it's you pick up on those things that you mentioned, and like in this set of episodes, I think there's a clear difference in like the number of people like wearing Western clothes as well. Like when they go to the big theater, in I think it's episode 5. So many people are just wearing suits. Kiku's wearing a suit all the time now instead of his robe that I don't remember the name for. I almost said a yukata, but I don't think that's what it is. But yeah, that seemed like a sort of a different thing, kind of like you were saying, over the passage of a number of years, like the kind of the encroaching Western influence. The cuisine is a great way to do that. I do feel bad that like, I mean, I know you're supposed to like, love Sukeroku. He's just like the roguish, like, devil may care. Well, that's not the right word. But
don't you mean Sukabroku?
Right, exactly. This is a great way to put it.
I struggled to get that in there. I struggled to crowbar in the bro bit, but I did it. By God, I did it.
You did it, and it's true. I mean, he's very carefree. Is not concerned with like the future and planning the way that Kiku is. Keeping his house, keeping a job, saving money, and the only reason he's working there is to pay for this apartment so that he, but also his friend can live. I mean, because if he didn't have this apartment, his friend would be living on the street, and his friend is just like assuming he's gonna do it. You know what I mean? Just like taking for granted, like, well, of course, like I'm gonna live with you and do it. Like he seems very at times taken for granted by Sukeroku, but also at times. It's funny, it seems like no one really sees him truly except for Sukeroku. There's an interesting kind of dichotomy going on there. And it leads to Kiku being frustrated a lot of the time.
Yeah, we finally get the moment that I was thinking was going to happen in the earlier episodes, but there's actually now, I suppose, makes more sense that it's happened here, which has been built up over time, which is the why do you get everything, I don't get shit kind of moment. Mm-hmm. Which isn't really my song, but I thought it'd be worth mentioning because I'm going to come back to talking about Sukeroku and Kikiko in a bit and their relationship and how it plays out both on and off stage, and in some ways can be mirror images of each other, as it turns out.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll lead off with a bit of a small point. We'll go in chronological order through my notes. So when Kiku is kind of getting on to Sukeroku and telling him, like you just go out and drink and all you do is carouse with women, and you don't take anything seriously. You don't devote time to practice and to art. Like you're a disgrace. And one of the things Sukeroku tells him is, hey man, it's all artistic reference. Everything I do, which on the face of it can seem like a poor excuse, right? But this is one of those points that we have talked about before. I believe we talked quite a bit about it in why am I blanking on the name of the most recent Masaki Yuasa show, Eizouken.
There we go.
And life experience kind of informing art, and like it's part of the reason why Kiku is bad at some Rakugo, and we find out part of the reason that Sukeroku can't authentically portray certain kinds of characters in ways that make the most sense and connect with people, because he doesn't like that's not kind of in him, but he can do a lot of the things he can do because like he has all this experience observing people, life experience in all these kinds of different situations. And Rakugo talks about some pretty hairy situations. And it seems like Sukaroku has gotten himself into quite a few of those, but like, you know, his performances have all this character. And because they're grounded in something, you know, and he can do these mannerisms because he's seen them before. And, you know, it's about life experience, but I think too, it's just about like having other experiences, whether they're like, you know, IRL experiences or even just like consuming other media. Like, I think this is sort of a broader point about like, if you're an artist, you know, kind of don't only consume and be like laser focused on what's currently happening in your particular field of art. I mean, like so many people throughout the years that have been really great artists have given kind of similar advice to people who ask like, well, what do I do on the come up? Like, you know, how do I get inspired? Or like, what's the best advice you can give? And they'll say like, you know, keep like, don't just stay in this one lane, like read, watch, listen, experience other things so that like the field of art that you're in won't become this sort of incestuous loop that is feeding off of only itself. Like you'll be bringing in other perspectives and other things that'll make the art richer and make everyone's experience richer. And I thought it was a cool point that this sort of scene made me think of that.
Yeah, I just wanted to add when you said about like the idea of Sukeroku like finding it difficult to seduce certain Rakugo. Well, he did pretty well in the Family Jewels one, given that he's usually getting someone else to cup them for him instead, rather than doing it himself.
Fair, a very fair point.
I have to say though, like if you ever wanted like again an endorsement on how this show does its Rakugo trails, I laugh my ass off at that. Like it's a gaudy, stupid joke where it turns out the entire story was a dream and he's just accidentally cupping his own, you know,
the treasure bags.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You know, he's cupping the novelty in car air freshener. You know,
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
this may
and
be.
That's all it leads up to. That's all the punchline is. But I was belly laughing at it. I was having such a good chuckle at it. And that to me, like, is such a great thing this show does because it'd be all too easy for the show to be kind of a very sterile kind of like, you know, look that's divorced from the actual enjoyment of the art of Rakugo, where it's all about the behind the scenes preparation, discussions and mediations on like the thing that you said, which is still valid, by the way. I shouldn't say that it's not, but rather like it could be all that kind of stuff. But you actually still enjoy the Rakugo performances that are going on, which is like so vital, I think, in my opinion. Like it's genuinely entertaining in its own right, even beyond all the character stuff, all the cultural examinations that we've talked about.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, as performance art, Rakugo still has to connect with people directly in a way that, like, you know, other kind of like a painter or sculptor. Like, I mean, you certainly want to communicate with people, but like, it's just a different kind of worry that performers have. There's like an immediacy between what they're doing and audience response. They have to have that connection immediately. So yeah, it has to be entertaining, like you said. And I thought like so many of the performances in this episode were so good and so entertaining. Like I was just, you know, like I could have, like, because I was, you know, writing notes on the episodes, I could have been like, okay, he's just telling his Rakugo story. Like, I'll write notes about something else and not pay attention to what the story is. But I was like, you know, they had me hanging on every word. And like, what's going to happen to the boatman and the samurai? What's going to happen to this lady is, you know, whose gender is being questioned? Like, what's gonna happen with these? It's so, you just get caught up in it via the performances being so good. And these episodes, again, like we talked about this last time, Sean, but like they're awesome at, like, you know, the camera cuts, and there's a lot. There's like,
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah.
I'll visually demonstrate. There's one amazing bit where in the scene in the story that Sukeroku is telling, like it's clearly some gentleman who is like on either an upper floor of a house or like basically on a higher elevation than the person who's talking to him. And so what Sukeroku does, which is just so subtle, but like again, it's still by the camera as well, is like you have cuts where down, it goes, "Hey mister, how's it going up there?" And then he just goes, "It's fine until you came along, you little shit."
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where you can say you look up and then you look down again. Like, and again, you have to remind yourself that in Rakugo, you are very, very limited on both your actual space that you can operate in and what you're capable of doing. So the fact that he's doing that is credit to him for doing so. But I'll mention as well, like, again, with these kind of things, like where it's like with Given, we have two audiences in the show. We have the audience of the fiction, of the fictive space, which are the people that we've talked about. Like, I think you mentioned, like, the people wearing the suits and such. And then, of course, you've got regular schmucks like you and me, who are actually real living people, I hope, watching. Hi, people who might be watching. I'm going to break the fourth wall here. If you're like, is this like some Inception level shit? Point being, though, like, you have obviously, of course, have these two different audiences: the fictive one and the real one. And it's all well and good, like, for a show like that could be very lazy and say this is entertaining because the fictive audience is laughing, and I'm just there like, I ain't smiling. Come on,
Yeah.
But that's the thing, like, the show does well is it remembers it's not merely enough to have a fictive audience enjoy the work that's being put out there. You have to like it in your own right as well, and I do. So there you go.
Hello, fictional go-go in the chat.
Knew it all along.
Yep. right. Whose imagination are you a figment of? This is the question.
Is this are we but a dream within a dream thing? Are we going to go do
maybe.
that? Are we going there? Oh my god!
Get Christopher Nolan on the phone. Help him write that.
He's actively trying to hurt people by getting them to go watch his stupid fucking film in the cinema.
Oh
Put
God,
it out to
that's
VOD, Chris.
right. That's right. Oh,
Put it out to VOD, Chris.
I forgot.
I know you like your IMAX stuff, but if you want to, like, if you just fucking do it anyway. Never mind. We'll not talk about that.
Well, Gutex told me the pandemic was over, so I think it's okay now. It's okay.
I was hoping
to go see the movie.
I was hoping we could get by without mentioning that fucking moron, but I'm guessing that was
made me so sad. Like the saddest.
If you don't know who Goosex is, that's fine. I don't know who he is anymore either since he decided that he'd start retweeting far right shit about how hydroxychloroquine is actually effective and it's all deep conspiracy by the media, blah 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 blah. And I'll just point out that someone tweeted back saying, "Oh yeah, well everything you just said is a great comfort to my mother who died of COVID-19. You piece of shit." Anyway, moving on. So
shouts to Family Fun Arcade. Anyway.
Okay, my next talking point.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Kikiko's leg injury.
Oh, wait. So, I'm sorry. Well, just before we move on from what we were saying, do you mind if I add something real quick?
Yes.
You do mind?
No, I mean, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry. That question
Who's on first?
Always catch me off guard.
Yeah, I know.
Because it's the other answer. Like, no, go right ahead.
I should know better than to ask it. It's very confusing always. Well, just in addition to like the great like dope camera cuts, like they brought in some new kind of techniques as well to help the fact that this is a television show, sort of, an animation of a recording of a live performance. Like they added some stuff to that to help immerse the real television audience in it even more. By sort of physically manifesting on screen what the audience was imagining. Like there were hints of this before, especially in Kiku's like with his mature self in the first episode, like giving his performance. Like there was a lot of that, but there hasn't been as much of that in young Kiku and young Sukeroku. But like there's these great scenes where it shows like very dim lamplight. They'll be in different rooms. Kiku will be suddenly like he'll be in this dimly lit hotel room and he'll be there, but the shadow on the wall will be of like a lady, of like a geisha, like sort of traditionally how they have their hair done up. All these kind of different things that I think really demonstrate that over time these two kids have really gotten good at Rakugo. They've gotten great at like really bringing their audience along for the ride with them and taking them to these places and absorbing them in the stories And even though they're like the audience in the show, they're not seeing that stuff, but like they are, you know what I mean? And like they're just so locked in. And
When you say that though, Doc, there actually is one moment in specific where when he's doing the final Rakugo performance of this block of episodes, the one about the lover's suicide, there's the one where he's pretending to be the geisha, and we have a cut where we have an audience member who's looking like, huh? And then we go straight to the scene of where it's like him realizes a geisha, covering like the top line of his face like this. But then, of course, it's in reality when it fades away to that.
It's so good.
You know, just him. But the thing is, that cut from that audience member to that particular set of animation where we see him as the geisha is a direct implication that they are in turn seeing it as much as we are.
Yeah.
It joins us both together as like fixers and real audiences, in that they like that's the way they see it, and that's the way that we're being presented it as well.
So good. So good. I love it. I love the technique, period. And I love the fact that it's being used, again, to show that, like, over time, these guys are improving so much. But now, tell me about Kiku's injury. Tell me about his leg.
So, Kiku's, like, leg injury, like, on the face of it, you might think to yourself, like, could you jettison this from the show? As a thing that happens. Now, obviously, I'm going to say, no, you can't. But I'm trying to just go back from the beginning here as to why it exists in the show for, like, and what it is used for in order to help Kiku's character. So the first thing I want to know is that we, of course, get introduced in this block of episodes to Miyokichi, a fascinating character who I am still not quite decided on yet how I feel about her. And maybe that's just me being, like, overly cynical, perhaps. But I'll come to it a bit because I have a whole section like that I want to talk about with her and Kikiko. But anyway, point being, in the episode 6, we of course get a flashback to Kiko's like dance lessons when he was younger, and there's a scene at the end of that particular flashback where he's walking up a road after he's learned that he's going to be expelled for failing the course because he can't dance because he's got an injured leg, which is that's so fucking stupid, isn't it? Like, you know, like, okay, you sir are blind, please weave this tapestry for me, please knit me a sweater like that you have never done before. And I'm like, oh fuck's, it's so harsh on him, honestly. But point being, like, the scene is very explicit on how it shows like him, like, you know, trying to walk up these steps and really struggling because of his injury. And indeed, like, there's some kind of way, like, you know, tears and such, like all these beads of sweat, but they might be tears as well. But then when we get to the Rakugo performance in the present day, at least at the time of the episode, when Kikiko is like actually on stage, he's ascending stairs again, but he's doing so without his cane. And the thing is, he still uses the cane even though his injury isn't quite so bad anymore. There's times when it acts up, like when it rains, for example, but for the most part, he doesn't really need it. And it's a wonderful metaphor, him abandoning the, like, obviously he abandons the cane, he doesn't take it to the Rakugo form, but it's a wonderful metaphor how we see in that particular way he's walking without the cane, that no longer does he feel like it's a burden for him, you know?
Yeah.
But also, it ties back to what's been bothering him throughout these episodes, particularly the last two, which is, why is he doing Rakugo? It's to survive. It's so that he doesn't, like, you know, ever have to go, like, you know, back to that place in his life where he felt unsure about where he was going to, like, be able to sleep, get his next meal. He did it basically as an exercise of, you know, keeping a roof over his head. Because of the leg injury put him there in the first place. And so I find it fascinating how many ways you can look at this, how it must look inspiring. Like, every time he looks down at that cane, it is the thing that has burdened him to, like, be stuck where he is, but also it's the thing that keeps him going as well. It is in some way both the perpetrator of all the stuff that all of his suffering, but it's now also his motivating factor to keep on doing it. But then when he finally realizes that he no longer needs to do Rakugo just for the purpose of putting bread on the table, but rather to do it as an expression of who he is as a person, that's when the show pays particular attention to that contrast between that scene of him walking up as a child and really struggling versus them ascending the steps to the Rakugo stage and doing so with confidence. Like, it's very deliberate. Like, it's like in the early episodes where they paid particular attention to him and Sukuroku's, like, mobility and the difference between it in very explicit shots. Like, there's so much to this. Like, and that's the thing. Like, you could rewrite this story, in my opinion, in any number of ways to not have Kikiko be, like, you know, injured, like, have that leg injury. You could have simply just said that he got expelled for, I don't know, any number of reasons. You can write whatever you want. That's how writing works. You write what you need to make the story happen. But they added this thing in that is in some sense optional, but it enriches his character so much, in my opinion. And it serves as a
Yeah.
nice physical representation of his anxieties. And also like in turn like the things that have happened to him and what he's still struggling still to this day, which is also why Miyokichi like he says, hey, will you massage my leg? And notice, and the thing is, he's not asking that in a sexual sense, which bear in mind she's a geisha, so I would maybe that could have been taken that way from someone else, but not from him because he treats her differently. But in some way, I think that's the moment when he asks us to do that is the point where he starts to accept that maybe he wants someone else to try and heal him a little bit. I'm not saying that she's got magic hands that'll make the injury go away,
No.
permanently. I'm not saying she's going to do that stupid karate kid something. There you go. Your leg's good now. Go sweep the leg. There you go. What I need to say, is that I think that was the point in which he recognized, okay, it's not as bad as it was, but it's still a burden for me in terms of how I feel emotionally, and maybe I can let someone in a little bit to help me get through that. There's a lot, like it's not a vestigial thing. It's not something that happens, then we just have it constantly walking around and came through. No, we will keep using it, but we won't also overdraw attention to it. It's perfectly balanced.
Totally. And I was gonna save this. I said we're gonna go in chronological order, but you brought up like the big theme, and I'll just, I guess, say my piece on it really quickly, as I write a final note for later, so I don't forget that a little bit. Because
Kill Shadon, steal Lava Land.
yeah, exactly. Yep, definitely, that's on the paper. So yeah, like the end of episode 6. Holy shit, man! Like, was so good. It was so just incredible how we have seen this character Hiku struggle mightily throughout these 6 episodes, throughout just the different points in his life. Sometimes he's been super vulnerable and open about it. Sometimes he's when he was a child, and sometimes, most of the time, he puts a brave face on it. But like, he just feels deeply frustrated with just about everything in his life. And I think by the time he's an adult, he very much feels like, this is not the kind of thing that I can, as I guess you normally would, like, what I mean is, let me back up. I'm talking over I keep getting ahead of myself. He, like most adults, probably feel like this is not a thing I can just talk with anybody about, right? Just share these really deep frustrations and deep anxieties and parts of myself. And, he also, things like you were saying, that he wanted to be a geisha, that he wanted to dance, that he's got that side to him. Things that like traditional gender roles would sort of label as this sort of feminine side. These are things that he keeps bottled up, all these different things. And then finally, right through his performance in the play, and then the final Rakugo in episode 6, something just unlocks in his head. Like, I've talked before about, like, people when they're young needing to like have a story to tell themselves and tell other people about why they do what they do, and what informs their life choices. Well, as you rightly pointed out, up until this point, Kiku's just been really concerned with survival. But the war is over. The theater is back, despite being like something that's a little bit like, don't tell anyone that I'm an actor or do Rakugo. I'm just a student, but it's there. Like, he's getting a lot of work, and so he's been posed this question by Sukeroku, like, why do you do what you do? And it sort of flummoxes him at first, but like through these last couple of performances, he finds out like I don't have to do this just to survive. I don't have to like do this to make anyone else happy so that I can keep on living. I can do this for myself. I can totally become absorbed in this character and in this story because I relate to it, because I can express myself through it, and I can just be myself up here, and no one, unlike real life, like when I'm on stage, no one's gonna laugh, no one's gonna boo or say, like, they're all gonna watch me, and I can transport other people. Other people will be transported along with me while as I transport myself into this fiction and tell these stories. And it is just like incredible to see that this boy who these women were laughing at early in his life, like, oh, that boy wants to be a geisha. What an idiot. If only he'd been born a woman. Like, now he realizes, I can be a geisha. I can dance in people's minds.
Yes, exactly.
Through storytelling. I can do that. I can do whatever I want. It's amazing.
Yeah, that is so good because it basically justifies all that time he spent learning to dance to be a geisha back when he was younger. Because it's not about what he realizes is that he treats Rakugo, and I think he also felt this way in hindsight about his dancing, but now he understands the core ideas of both of them, is that he treated them very academically. Mm-hmm. Like, I must recite this word for word perfectly, but without realizing the nuance that comes from, doing that. Like, he basically treats it like filling in a test, I suppose. You could call it like that.
Yeah, what did the seventh generation say? Too much practice, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. These have some flaws. And that's why Sukeroku can do what he can do, because Sukeroku doesn't treat it academically. He treats it as a passion or a hobby, if you want to call it that. There is no formal learning structure for him in his mind or way of doing it. He just rolls with it with his will, like drawing on the energy of the audience, like reacting to them. Like, he has no, beyond the actual words of the scripts that he reads, he has no rigid structure. I would imagine, for example, if you had Sukeroku perform the same Rakugo play twice, I would imagine his choreography would be different. He would probably be like a little bit expressive, a little bit more like he would react to the audience and play like, and that's one of his talents. Mm-hmm. But that also, I wanted to just add on what you said there about like the whole going back to being a geisha and dancing. Like, Kikuyo, like, although his injury is better, he probably still can't dance. But the thing is, like, him doing that dancing and learning to be a geisha was about like the expression, I suppose, of femininity. And now he's found a different avenue through which he can actually do that, both in the play and then in Rakugo. So it makes him realize that all that time, like, he goes back to the point where he wasn't pressured anymore, like, to do, because he wasn't doing the geisha thing to survive. He was still a young boy. Like, he wanted to try and do that, and it didn't work out. But now he's realized that core idea of expressing these feminine ideas, articulating them, being in touch with that side of himself. Like, he now has realized that this art form that he's been learning for so long is a means through which he can express it. And that's why it's suddenly become his Rakugo.
Yep. Yeah.
It's great.
It's so cool. It's so cool because, like, he's such a repressed guy. And I imagine that in that society, there were probably a lot of repressed men because there were very, and continue to be in that society today. In most societies, there are very strict ideas of sex and gender and what individuals like need to fit into these boxes, do these things, kind of conform their selves that don't really fit in boxes to these sort of preconceived categories. But like, he can just peel all that away and express, if this is, gender, if this is sexuality for him, like whatever this kind of part of his identity is, like all that repression and shame and frustration, he can peel it off like his character, peeled off his shirt and robe to reveal that he was indeed a man in that play. And it's just like, it's just kind of life affirming to see, and such a cool message. And it doesn't feel like like preachy, like the show is like wagging finger at you saying like you can be who you are, like, you know, and it just doesn't solve all his problems. You know, he's still a pretty tragic figure in a lot of ways, a very melancholic dude, but he has this place that he's made for himself now. Like his Rakugo is his sort of his home where he can truly express like the core of his being. And like I what if we could all have that? That would be fucking awesome.
One day.
God. Well, Shadon, before we continue, I need us to pause so that I can take a short break. Would that be all right with you? All right. We'll be back in just a tick. We return. And now I pass the mic back to Shadon because it is his turn.
You do indeed. Okay, so time for an open discussion question here. And I'm going to pitch it to you, Doc. First thing, do you remember the names, without looking up or cheating, of the two characters we met in the first episode who are not Kikiso?
Oh, right. I don't remember their names. I remember their likenesses. I remember their personalities. I remember what they look like. But I cannot remember the red-haired woman with the yellow striped shirt or the Sukeroku clone. Their names. No, I can't.
Well, to be fair, you're right. He is solid Sukeroku. There you go.
Right. Yes. Totally.
The Les Rakugo's Terry project. Sorry, I'll never get over that. Anyway, the reason I bring that up, that wasn't to make you look bad. That was because I've been thinking to myself as we've gone along here through these episodes, like they are legitimately really damn good. But I haven't yet decided on this. I wanted to run it by you. Do you think that the show would have benefited by cutting back to it was Yakumo and Konatsu, like maybe just at least once in this time? By which
Boy.
I mean, there are ways you could do this, and I'm going to say offhand that there's one way you definitely don't do it, which is you literally have constant interruptions by Yotaro going, "Wait, was it really like that? Was it really like that?" Like, no, you don't do that. What I would say you
Matane.
do, if I was to do this thing that I'm suggesting, and I'm not even saying that that makes the show better by default. I'm just trying to express the best way I think it could be done so we can discuss it. Is that I would have it be that they get to the end of say the reuniting with them at the end of World War II bit, and then he says, "That's all for tonight," and then they go their separate ways and they pass the events that they've got so far in their heads. Like you have Konatsu, like she's having a smoke and she's thinking over like, "Was that my dad? Really?" Or was that, or rather, that was Kikisu? Like he seems like he doesn't seem anything like he's like that kind of thing. Um, Now, the reason I asked this, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing the show doesn't bring these two back in, because I know it will do at the end. It obviously has to. There's no way we cut to credits in episode 12 and it doesn't mention their thoughts on it whatsoever. Like, although I know how that, I'm just imagining how someone who's watched the show is just there like,
Yeah, just cackling.
oh, just Mr. Bad calls it. But I'm just thinking to myself, what would we gain if we brought that element in? Or rather, what would we lose as well? Because I said before about the idea of fictive audiences and then also like the real audience. Like that's the thing that we're not seeing here as a fictive audience anymore. Because we're not getting like at least at some point an intermission where Yotaro and Konatsu can like have their like thoughts. They don't even need to discuss it open with each other. They can, as I say, just literally go like to bed or go their separate ways, have a smoke break, whatever, and just think of what they've seen here. And so I'm just going to throw that out to you, Doc. Like, again, I'm not saying this makes the show bad that they're not involved as much as I'm suggesting here, but how do you feel about that?
Oh, I'm honestly fine with it because I am like the Rakugo stories that are told in this episode, totally absorbed in the story. And maybe this is the idea was that like that Kiku, in the present time, talking to Kanatsu and the other person whose name I've already forgotten, bad on me, is giving the Rakugo performance of his life, and they are so absorbed in it that they are not interrupting for questions or whatever, and maybe that's how we're supposed to experience it also, as just a big kind of performance that is itself like a prelude to the rest of their lives that will come in the second season.
I mean, the one argument I could make perhaps in favor of them doing this is because the reason the Rakugo performances are happening that we've seen are to advance Kikuzo's character. Like this, they're about him.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, and also about Sukeroku as well, because that's why he's telling the tale, to tell his story as much as it is about him. But the reason that the story is even being told to Konatsu and Yotaro in the first place is, of course, to give them that understanding. Mm-hmm. So if we don't then have a reaction from them, doesn't that defeat the point? Now, again, got to stress, there's obviously, I feel 99.99% certain we'll get to the end and there will be that moment of like contemplation. There will be that moment of,
oh yeah,
wow, my dad really was an alcoholic, but he was a good man. That kind of thing. But I'm just thinking, is there a time and a place for there to be that intermission? I'm on board with your line of thinking, though, in that I'm so engaged with what's going on. Like, I don't think it's a case of, like it may potentially made it a seal it bare, but again, we have to also trade out time of the show. Like, there's only so many minutes per episode and so many episodes. So we definitely have to lose something, and nothing is wasted in Rakugo Shinju. Mm-hmm. Like it is a lean show. There's no fat, there's no gristle in it. So
yeah, and I'm wondering too, if not just wasted time, but to I noticed this about myself when I was watching these episodes. It took me several minutes about a third to half of episode 4, to where I really felt like I am 100% tuned in now. I'm totally focused on what's going on. There's a ramp up time, I think, for your audience in this kind of story to become that immersed. And if you hopped timelines, you would then there would be that reinvestment time required that maybe that's not a thing that they want to risk, is the breaking of the immersion in the flashback that's happening. Like, because I mean, is it that way for you? It has always been that way. I don't know, for me. I don't know, that just
you're spot on, I think, because if you do end up having that break point, you then have to re-engage, and there are ways you could probably make that easier by, for example, having it be the very end of the episode, like where
that's a good point.
They have that, and where they have that intermission, and then episode 4 picks up exactly where we left off. But even then, there's still like that break point.
Yeah. That's a
I'm
good
all-
point.
Again,
No, that's a good point by you. I guess like you wouldn't risk as much there if, like, it cut to them saying stuff and then Kiku was like, just wait until I tell you about the play. Cut to credits, and then episode 5 again.
I wouldn't even having done that, to be quite honest. But anyway, I only bring it up just as an interesting thought because, again, there is a reason that beyond obviously the reason of this show was made to entertain us real people. It's also like the story itself has a justification for why it's being told to begin with, and the fact that they've made no appearances since then. One could then perhaps maybe even argue that it's not necessarily about them, at least until we get to that point, but rather it's about Kikiso's own reassessment of his history of Sukeroku. Maybe he'll come out of it himself with a different opinion.
That would be pretty awesome. As someone who should probably remember if that happens or not, because I've only seen the first season. That'd be pretty dope. Certainly, the opportunity will be there for his opinions and stuff to be challenged. Now that we, the audience, know everything, and the other characters will know everything, that'll be really interesting to see.
He reveals that he has a cane sword. I'm sorry, but if you're in a Japanese anime and you've got a cane, it needs to be a cane sword. I don't care about the context. I don't care about the mood or the tone you're going for. I just want to see a cane sword. Is it too much to ask?
That's what Sukeroku clone is definitely asking in the beginning of the story. Did your cane turn into a sword? Did you pick that as your weapon? Did you pick that as your weapon in Bloodborne? Did you pick the cane?
I did, and I found out later it was shit, and I'm like, this is why I don't like Bloodborne.
It's not shit, but it definitely dictates the play style. If you want to be if you want to play a dash in, dash out rogue that deals damage, small amounts of damage quickly, cane is good. If you want to play just charge in and cut fools up, other weapons preferable. But this is not the Bloodborne cast. Are you ready to talk about Miyokichi?
You're going to say to rumble then also getting.
Are you ready to rumble? No. Let's talk.
The answer to both questions is of course yes.
Yes, right. Miyokichi is just she's a delight. I really, really love her character, and that's why at the end of our last talk about the show, she makes the briefest of appearances at the end of episode 3, and I'm just like, oh yes, Miyokichi, I can't wait. What did you think about her? What are your ideas? You said that you were conflicted. Tell me about your conflict.
I am 80% certain that she is genuine towards Kikiso, and 20% of the opinion that she views him as a curiosity.
Yeah. Or perhaps it began as the latter, but it turns into the former. That would be a very sort of, I don't want to be insulting. That would be a kind of rote approach to all this. But no, I hear you. But elaborate. Tell me why you feel conflicted.
I think it's the way that she approaches him in episode 4, specifically after they're introduced, in which like she says like to him, you don't like undress me with your eyes like all these other guys, which he doesn't, to his credit. But then she like literally falls on him, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm a bit like, okay, are you operating under the guy? Are you trying to like draw that out of him, that very attitude that you're not necessarily into? I'm a bit unclear on. Now, don't misunderstand me, people listening at home or on the bus or in whatever, like, Arctic wasteland you might be wandering. So the one person who may eventually listen to our podcast while going up to the North Pole. God, that'd be a thing, wouldn't it? Point what I'm trying to get across here, though, is that I'm not saying that her doing this because she thinks the curiosity is like a bad thing for the show. Like, characters can do bad or like undesirable things in the service of a narrative. And I am of the opinion, you said it was rote, but I still think it works, and I'll explain why when we get into a bit about the idea of the duality of their relationship and also what it means to be in and out of both actors' garb and makeup.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but like, I found that a bit odd of her behavior, like where also she was probably drunk, so.
Yeah.
Where, okay, don't dress with your eyes, but I'm going to fall on you and then be very suggestive. But we do get that scene, that little hand gesture at the end where Bond just like pulls her a little bit closer, just a tiny bit closer.
Yeah, and just like she got you. Her hooks are in. Like now you are a thing. What thing that you are exactly?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure, but you are now a thing. And yeah, I mean, I agree with you about like sort of what are her motivations. Because in those early scenes that we get between her and Kiku in episode 4, I mean, she's pretty clearly performing, right? I mean, that the fall on him, very staged. Like, she's like, you're supposed to catch me, right? And there's this amazing shot that, that I picked up on, and then I saw that it was mentioned in our Discord too, where Gogo was saying they're really focusing a lot on Miyokichi's feet. And Grizzly was like, oh man, I just got to the part last episode where they were talking about the footwork of the Rakugo characters. And I put two and two together and I was like, exactly. Like that shot is supposed to tell you, she's performing here.
Well,
now who put her up to it? Like, if someone put her up to it, like, is this the master?
Well,
is this her own, like, I'm curious about this very handsome boy, I want to figure him out? But it seems like, again, at least in the beginning, that she is acting, and but it's like now by the end of episode 6, I'm left wondering, is she still acting? And that's great. I love that it's so ambiguous.
I don't think she is, and I'll tell you why. Because like as Grizzly and Robot said about the idea of the footwork. Know also how many scenes that we see of her outside of her geisha outfit and makeup as the time progresses.
Yeah.
Like we get, for example, her meeting Bon in the or Kiku, sorry, in the restaurant, and that's definitely her not on the clock, or like how she. Or rather, the most amazing bit of duality is when, of course, she's helping him get ready for the performance by applying makeup to him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so cool.
But the thing is, like, that's not her trying to embarrass him or anything like that. That's her legitimately going out of her way to help him, doing it off the clock.
Yeah. And you can see why, like, he... sorry, I just was going to say really quickly, based on what you just said, that scene, you can see why Kiku has let his guard down around her a bit, because she is like, I don't know, just one of the only people that, besides Sukeroku, that really are interested in him and curious about him as a person. And Sukeroku, like, it's different with him. Like, you feel like he sees Bon, as he calls him, Kiku, and cares about him, but, like, it's just different. Like, Miyokichi is like, tell me about you. Tell me about what you're doing. I'm interested. I want to know.
Well, one of the key differences to note, though, is that obviously Kikiso and Sukeroku have known each other for much of their lives. Yeah. Like, they have more years of shared friendship than they don't. at this point. I mean, they must be what, like, if this is like post world, like, they were already like in their like late teens, early adult life in World War Two. So this is now sometime after that, so again allowed that cultural drift to happen. So they must be early 30s, if I had to push, maybe late 20s. Let's go with that. But either way, they have more years of having known each other than not. Whereas Miyaki, I apologize for mispronouncing the name.
You're right.
She is a new presence in their life, in his life in particular, Kikiso's. And she approaches him in that way where eventually he is willing to let his guard down with her, and that of itself like is something new and fascinating, like to him. Like there's like Sukeroku, like for all his flaws, is a comfort blanket, but this is something new and different and genuine. It seems, at least I hope it is.
Yeah, maybe the idea is Miyokichi is also learning to let her guard down, and by that I mean, maybe over time she's learning she doesn't have to perform her routine like she does with other men to get them to notice her and, talk to her and care about her and invest in her. And so maybe this is it. Like maybe she is sort of learning, like she doesn't have to play this role, that she can be more, I don't know, just kind of more of herself. And they have such a good dynamic together because, like, in a way, like you see that they're both kind of melancholy when she's like talking to him in the rain, rubbing his leg, and they're just kind of sitting in silence together. She has kind of a sad expression on her face for a bit, but a lot of the time she's like, trying to encourage him, and it's sort of the yin to his yang, if you will. And that works together and is really fun. And you mentioned like her in like Western dress. I think we just have to give a brief round of applause for her in Western dress. Cause like she crushes like the beret, those like 1960s dresses. Like just her fashion game is on point.
Yeah. She looks very classy indeed.
Oh, yes. Incredible.
Yeah. But the thing as well to note is that she similarly also is, as you say, someone who is an actor. Like there's that scene with her. I'm going to say matron because I don't know the specific term. Yeah. Where you can't be bringing men back to your house. Like there are rules, and it's like no, it's different. But of course, like if that then was to ever progress further between them two, that would be a stumbling block they would need to overcome. Like, and this again speaks to how Rakugo Shinju is. Like we discussed in the previous block of episodes about stuff like Takazura Fiercer and all that, like how it's testing and prodding and examining and even challenging, like, the restrictions and rules placed on performers in Japanese culture.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious to see that develop more. Like, will they try and form a proper relationship, but ultimately can't because of the rules, and then damn the rules, or how do we go about it? But like that in itself is a step like this story can take that I'm really interested to see. And on top of that, never mind, like, this is again something that's great about this show, in that it's got the cultural taboo, but it's also got the personal taboo, because in a wonderful moment of like, hypocrisy, if you want to call it that, like the master is courting her as well, or has been trying to court her. He's like, don't tell the wife.
Man, all three of them are into this chick. Yeah.
Don't tell the wife. But, like, so what would happen if like Hikiso, like, really wanted to like get things going for like start a proper relationship? Like, he's gonna have to tell the person who's like looks after him for so many years and has basically shaped him to the person he is today, or at least played a part in that. You clearly only view her as a disposable toy. Like, I think differently of her, so me and her are gonna like hook up together, and like, well, that's the end of it for you. You've got your wife, you prick. So like that in itself, like there's that personal, like it's not just about the cultural element, it's also about the personal relationships as well. Even in this little thing, it does that.
You mentioned how her manager is scolding Miyokichi, and Miyokichi says to the manager, and I quote, "Kiku-san isn't like that." Now, do you think that this means, this is where we're disadvantaged for not knowing Japanese and the nuances therein, but do you think this means he's not like that, he's not like taking advantage of me, or he's not he treats me well as a gentleman? Do you think she means he's not into ladies? Or is it both?
Well, they were kissing at the start of the scene before that.
Do you think he seemed very enthused about that? It seems like
Well,
she was kissing him, and he's just limply laying there, and she's like, "Oh, you're getting better." She
well,
could have been. This could have been acting lessons for all it seemed. He was so passionless.
Well, if you take the tone of the scene as a whole in that one, where he seems very dejected. In fact, she says, "You seem down," and that's where he starts talking about, like, you know, him not knowing what his brat goes for, if he should quit it outright. I think that I could make the argument that he maybe wasn't into it because he is distracted. I mean, that happens, you know.
Now, I should note, this is just Miyokichi's opinion. Like, I'm not stating whether or not I feel like he's gay, bi, whatever. I happen to think he's probably bi, but like,
yeah.
Do we think Miyokichi just thinks that he's gay? Is that part of why she feels comfortable around him? There's so much. There's like a lot that could be there, and maybe she doesn't mean any of that. Maybe she just is very much like, he's just a gentleman. He's not here for that. He's a friend.
Yeah.
It's intriguing to me, this line.
Mm-hmm. What I will say about that scene, though, is before the matron comes in and scolds it, like, of course, we open on the scene of the two of them kissing, and that's just like done and out very quickly without, as you say, any real passion. But what I like is how the scene ends or rather that moment between the two of them ends, which is that he, excuse me, he like rests his head on her.
Mm-hmm.
Which again I think speaks to the how this relationship, like, it starts on the appearances of them being like, you know, just like intimate, like as a physical thing, but there's really obviously not that much interest there at the moment for whatever reason. I mean, maybe momentary, maybe because he isn't interested because of his sexuality, you say. But what matters and what it ends on and what we are left with is the reason that he's with her or spending time with her because he can, like, you know, be open with her. Like, there are different kinds of intimacy. We see one kind at the start, but then we see this second kind that matters the most to him at the end.
Mm-hmm. And Gogo brought up in chat a point I was going to raise, that, you know, all of his, you know, sort of, I guess, quote unquote girlfriends, like, have seemed very kind of platonic in their relationship with Kiku, where they wanted more, but it seemed like he was maybe a little bit more distant. And that. I hesitate to like then like take that and then put like a sort of definite label on it, because, like, you know, sexuality is a thing that is not like you're either all into everyone or into no one. Like there's a lot of places on that spectrum that he could fall, right. He could be mostly into guys, but into some, I think, who knows? I don't know. But definitely it's true that, like, the show has presented him as a man who is more comfortable around men in general, was like very nervous around women, only sort of thought of them as a curiosity, and has had these relationships with women that were like, you know, when he was much younger, they seem to be, again, a lot more kind of platonic emotional attachments than
don't forget how he was treated by the geisha tutors that he was with as well.
Oh.
Like, oh yeah,
right,
that can color some. Yep,
right.
That can certainly color one's opinion, even in regards to their sexuality.
Like a science project. See, you're so right. That's exactly right. Well, and you're right too, Shadon. Yeah.
He mentioned, like, in that episode that I could just settle down with a regular random girl, like her, and live a regular random life, but wasn't for me. And hey,
right.
Fair sentiment. I can't disagree with that in the fucking slightest. But yeah, I find their relationship really fascinating, and I'm curious to see how it develops. But unless I am mistaken or I'm misremembering from episode 1, because it's been 2,000 years.
It's been a long time.
Because time is warped and stupid in this fucking COVID world we live in. I can't recall seeing if she was with him in the episode 1, the present day, with Konatsu and such. So it makes me wonder you know, does she meet an unfortunate end, or do they simply part ways? Her absence
She was not
in
in
the
the first
first.
episode. She was not there.
Yeah, her absence also is intriguing as a result. And funnily enough, that's again would tie back to my point of why an intermission might be a welcome thing. But then again, if we can think of it anyway, if you're paying attention and you think, then I suppose it's not necessary. And I
Hmm.
suppose that serves the show's credit that it's not willing to treat its audience like simpletons. That it's not going to like it doesn't need like its own equivalents for last time on Showa Genroku Rakugo Shinju.
Frieza transformed into his final form. Oh no. Goku, hurry up and get out of that healing tank for the love of God. Da-da-da-da-da-da.
All right. Anyway, I'm done talking about that. So yeah, but I've covered everything I actually wanted to say about Miyakichi. So
Okay.
shall I now talk? Shall I now talk about Sukeroku and Kikiko and how their relationship has progressed a little bit, and also the duality of on-stage performance versus real life?
Yeah, well, let me lead you into Suke and Kiku by talking a bit.
Sukebroku.
You're right. Right. Well, they got to have like a good ship name. God damn it, ship name.
Oh,
A ship name. Like a Kiku Roku, I think is probably the one to go with.
Sukeball. There you go.
Sukebon. Right. That's- and they grew up to develop Valhalla.
Hey, come on! You're not gonna. No one's gonna come with anything better than that.
Oh God. The ultimate Rakugo, Valhalla. Cyberpunk Rakugo. God damn it.
I'd be okay with that.
Well, I'm really curious to see what you'll have to say about their relationship because again, we use the term fascinating. The relationship between these two boys is fascinating. It is what has driven the show. Well, no, I can't say that because like so many of the different things we talk about feel so important. But nonetheless, this is such a huge part of what makes this interesting is their dynamic. And I feel, gosh, like Kiku loves Sukeroku, but he's so frustrated with him. He's frustrated with the way he lives his life. And maybe there's a bit of jealousy in there that he can't also cut loose. But I think a large part of him just doesn't want to. That's not the kind of life he wants to live. But the shittiest part is that like this guy's living this way and seeming to get all of the things that Kiku himself wants in terms of Rakugo. And
Well, you've just made me think of something that I should probably bring up, which I find really interesting now that I've thought of it. Which is, by what standard do we measure success here? Because by all accounts, like Sukeroku, he has the I dare even say a little bit of a Western standard success metric for a cishet guy, which is he goes out all the time, he gets smashed, he gets all the girls. Okay, he might not be like drowning in money, but he's got that gold medal in that particular arena, if you want to call it that, of the way that like a lot, particularly like in the 2000s, I think, in some extent the early 2010s, of like how like what constitutes a successful man, which is I go out, I get drunk, I go meet all the women, I'm handsome, I'm charming,
look at my cars.
and yeah, so. But I mean, that makes him happy. Don't get me wrong, and that's fair enough for him. But we see that Kikiko, like, what makes him happy is just having someone he can open up with, Miyakichi. Someone who he can be intimate with in that way. Maybe even a little motherly. But the show never portrays that as inferior. In fact, it spends so much time on it that it's actually, in the show's mind, superior. But I'm not going to say superior as a broad, overall thing. I think rather it means to show that he's that's what's suitable for Kikiko, and that just because Sukeroku can go around sleeping his way through every woman in the land, and drinking his way through all the booze that's there as well, inadvertently causing prohibition because he just didn't have any left. Whoops. He doesn't need to hold himself to that standard, and it goes to show how we in turn don't need to hold ourselves to stereotypes and such like that as well. What makes a successful man? So he's handsome and cut like Sukeroku, and he's no, it doesn't matter. what matters is what makes you personally happy in the end. I mean,
Well,
hey, if what makes you happy is being like Sukeroku and you manage to do that, good for you.
right. I mean, this is such an excellent point you bring up because we could also relate it to the beginning of the show when, the Yakumo, the eighth generation, Kiku, Hiku, just, everyone is praising him and lauding him, like what a man, what an artist, what a human being, like so successful in his field, like the grand master of Rakugo. But like all throughout his life, he's seen this other guy as someone who is better than him, has it better off. Things come easier to him. He surpassed me in Rakugo. He's always ahead of me. And it just goes to show you, like that, like you said, there's a relativity to success, and that it is not a one size fits all kind of thing. And depending on your perspective, other people can look like a success, but they themselves might not feel like one, or they can look like a failure, like a Sukeroku. Who'd want to live like that? But like he's like grabbing life by the shirt collar and just drinking it in.
By the treasure sacks.
Yeah, except by the treasure sacks. And he's just like, live fast, die young, Sukeroku. Like that's just how he's gonna live.
Don't say that.
That's
You know what I'm saying? You
that's not meant to be foreshadowing. That's just meant to be illustrative of his attitude.
Oh my god. Anyway, okay. So I want to talk first. There's two specific things I want to talk about here. The first of which is I want to talk about how we also see how Kikihiko has actually changed and grown more confident as a person over time in how he interacts with Sukeroku. We actually start to see in these episodes the formation of the mentor that he would become in episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
With the way, for example, like he says, "Okay, read this verse." And then when he starts reading the verse, he just grabs him by the ear and pulls him in. Like he takes control of the situation. He expresses authority in that. And then, of course, there is the amazing set of lines where he says, like, "Oh, actually, I've got charged like 500 yen a night or whatever for like people." So, like, clearly, he has at some point developed a sense of personality and ability to banter with Sukeroku, like to verbally spar with him. The thing that I should note, though, that you might think, well, what's the problem then? Like, why is he so guided? But the thing is, this is someone he's very familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
Not speaking from experience here, not everyone is capable of bantering on a level that you can, nor should they for that matter. You don't go up to a stranger and suddenly start waxing jokes with them about, like, on the kind that Sukeroku does. But in turn, not everyone should be approached that way either. So while we do see that he has progressed in terms of how he talks to him and how he's able to like handle these situations with him, where he is literally bringing back 2 women in the middle of the night, because that's what he fucking does. And like, I'm trying to practice. Like, he's still like that improvement is still in a very confined way, which I think is really, really good at the show to show that. It doesn't mean he isn't suddenly like super extrovert or anything like that. It's not as simple as you get confident and you come out of your shell. It depends what arena that if you are called that you exist in. And with Sukeroku, he knows him so well and knows how to play with him so well that he of course can do that. But then, well, we only need to look at how he handles Miyokichi to see that skill does not translate necessarily. Maybe the core of it's there that they can start working on developing a relationship and understanding of each other. But he doesn't simply start like waxing lyrical with her or start making jokes like, well, I was a geisha once, and then I took, then my leg gave out. Like he doesn't like start doing that. So I think that's really neat that we get to see that with him, where we see the formation of the mentor, but also how the show explains that, social skills are not sometimes like very specific to very specific people that which is not a bad thing necessarily, but it's not as ultra simplistic way of showing where, oh, suddenly I'm cool swag Kiki, or like, just drop me stuff around. Like, no, that doesn't happen. The second thing I will bring up is in the play, did you note the roles that both of them were playing? I mean, obviously you noticed what Kikihiso's role was, but did you notice what Sukeroku's role was?
A shaved head, sword wielding man. What? How do you mean?
Well, in the play, they were as characters man and wife.
Right. He was playing a wife. Yes. Yeah. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So on the one hand, you could then read into this as being an additional evidence for their relationship, or even just like how Kikiso feels towards him. Maybe it isn't strictly just brotherly love, but could be more than that. But on the other, I think it also shows like how they've taken their relationship off from outside the play into the play itself, because we see how Sukaroko defends him, and it is through his defense.
Yeah.
It's through his defense of Kikiso in this play as his character that Kikiso then finally gets to come out and express who he truly is. It's a metaphor for what's happening outside the play and how they're progressing as characters, and how Sukaroko is ultimately a positive influence who would, I'd argue, probably give his life for Kikiso. Like, it just goes to show again how, like, these plays, they're not things that are performed in a vacuum. They have meanings to the characters and express their relationships in ways beyond the obvious. So,
and at the
I like that was a...
Go ahead.
Go.
Okay,
No,
I was just gonna say that is so true that like that he would give his life for Bon, but at the same time, it's like he's clearly taking advantage of him, and I think that just goes to show you. I don't know. I've just thought over time, relationships are just so complicated. Like, there was definitely a time in my life that I felt like anyone that's bringing any negativity into your life can fuck off, and you can just cut them out. And I begrudge no one still even now for doing that. But I think that the show gets at something kind of true here, that like, Sukaroko causes Kiku a lot of stress. He's not the ideal he's not the ideal roommate. He takes advantage of him financially. And yet Kiku needs him, and they love each other. And they would like take a bullet for each other. And so, there's a complexity to their relationship that makes it feel definitely a lot more grounded. And I love the point that you bring up about the art reflecting the actual lives of these people doing the performances, because we talked about at the beginning how experiences in other media or just in life feed back into art. But it's cool how this is also true, that like through the play and even just through their Rakugo, like you can tell, right, that like Sukaroko is a very kind of intuitive person. He's not about practice or learning forms and structures. He's going to feel his way out. He's a sensual kind of person, definitely on that sort of level of being. Whereas Kiku is analytical, thoughtful, a rigorous study of how things work, and kind of an overthinker, an introvert. And that has like been his Rakugo, and he's very kind of a methodical person. So like it has taken him. So there's this incredible scene in episode 6 when like, he's done the play and he's feeling high. He's like, I finally learned what I needed to learn about like performing. And then off the cuff, Sukaroku's like, hey, yeah, it's like I told you that one time. You're good at the sexy stuff. Oh, good night. And then Kiku's just like...
Just give him the Brooklyn accent then.
Yeah. That was unintentional.
No, that's the only accent I think you could give Sukaroku. Like, if you inductive English, you'd have to be Brooklyn. Like, he talks like Meow from Pokemon again.
God.
They're wise guys. Like that.
This record goes nothing but trouble. Yeah. But yeah, he's just and Bond's head when he hears that is just like, oh my God. Like he just knew it. Like this motherfucker, Sukaroku, just like he knew all along something that's taken me literal years of my life to come to understand about myself. And it just makes him think, this bastard is just so far ahead of me still. And it's that like core tension between the two of them of like love and respect, but also like there's some kind of professional and personal like envy, and like, God, like this, this other one just gets it somehow, and I don't. And like he's on the verge of tears in that scene. Like it doesn't show his eyes. He's just kind of looking up, and you see kind of a lump in his throat, and then you see a little drop kind of come onto the tea kettle. And then it cuts to, I think, a cane going into the ground. It just all like amazing imagery. And God, I just love that scene. I love that scene to death.
Just to finally wrap up my point about like how Sugoroku supports him in a neat little bow, let me ask you a question, Doc. Let's assume in an alternate version of events that the play goes ahead as planned, but Sugoroku does not turn up. Let's just say that the reason he doesn't turn up is for a perfectly legitimate one. It's not because he's hungover. Let's give him the due credit here. Let's just say that he wanted to be there to support Kikiso but couldn't for whatever reason. And so they have someone else. I'm not going to give him a name. Let's just say someone else to play the role they did. Do you think that Kikiso would be able to do the performance as well as he did without knowing that Sugoroku was there?
No.
No.
No way.
No. So there you go. That seals the point nicely. That, we see, well, it's like Set plays on the plate, that they, he's his guardian in some sense. Even if he does cause trouble, even if, like, all the flaws come in, but people are not perfect, but he's certainly helped him a lot.
Totally. And yeah, falling asleep on his lap after just throwing out like, well, what? Here's why I do Rakugo. I discovered this in the war when I was doing it for the Chinese in Manchuria or whatever. I do it for the people. And it's just like he's got his story that he can tell himself and other people, and then just throws it out there to Kiku and then falls asleep. And it's just part of this whole scene of like, God, like, people are thinking, Kiku's great. Kiku's doing these great performances. He's like, oh, I'm getting it. I've unlocked within me the potential now to like be better. And like, he just sees his friend as like still like more successful and like leagues better than him from where he sits from his own perspective. And I think, having seen how the rest of the show, this is definitely a thing to keep in mind, is this like the tension between the two of them and their love for each other, but also their frustration and jealousy with one another in certain respects. And that is not unfounded, that you can totally see how each one could have legitimate issues with the other one. But the way it's going right now, that stuff is really kind of internal and mostly a positive motivation, I think. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Ooh, indeed. All right. Well, I'm done on my talking points. I have nothing else to add about this particular set of episodes. Do you have anything else you want to bring up, Doc?
I don't think so. I mean, gosh, I'm sure I could comb through my notes and find a thing or two, but I think I've hit on all the big points. So if I had to rate this set of episodes, Shadon, I think that I'd probably give it God, this is so hard. I'm deciding between 4.5, 4.75, and 5. Like where does it lie? Because make no mistake, this is stellar material. The writing, the directing, the imagery, the themes, the characterization, it's all just coming together and singing beautifully. But I think I'm gonna go 4.75 amazing sexy braise out of 5.
I'm going to give the same score, actually. I'm going to give 4.75 lumps of charcoal tossed at a brother from another mother. There you go. Because about the only thing I would say that I'm not sure about with these episodes is what I said about like how I think maybe it would potentially benefit it to bring like Yakuno and Konatsu back into the story only briefly, just so we could be reminded. Because I think now that I follow a bit more, like Konatsu's listening to this because she wants to know about her father, like and who he was as a person. Like, and there's a lot of emotional power that can be drawn from that, particularly from an evolving understanding. So I think that leaving her out of this, even as I say, if it's just a very brief intermission, I think is something I personally would change. But make no mistake, like when you're dealing with material as good as this, like, and I'm just some random schmuck who doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Like, I could be talking out my ass with that. And I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts would be as well, like people listening at home on the bus or in the North Pole, on if it would be better if there was. And again, I don't want it to be like, where Yakuna was like, wait, did that really happen? Like, that kind of shit. Like, no. Just have it be like that's all for tonight, folks. We'll talk again tomorrow. And just have them, like, quietly reflexing, I think would be the way I would do it. But I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on it.
The Sherlock method. It's not. Let's pretend I never said that.
I'm drinking my way through the rest of the alcohol in my house. You won't have said it. It'll gone from my brain.
Do you remember what Konatsu looks like?
She's the redhead.
But do you remember what she looks like? Now that you've seen this set of episodes, go take another look, and you might find it a revelatory.
Oh no! Oh no!
Oh yes. Oh yes. How do we get there? Well, we'll see over the next 6 weeks.
I fucking hate you.
Oh, come on.
Tsukuroku,
you would have known.
You shit!
You would have known.
You shit! I'm done. Send us home. Take us out of here. Well, I've got nothing else to add.
Okay. All right. This has been another episode of Deshou the Third, the second episode, I believe. And that's been Rakugo Shinju, Showa Genroku Rakugo Shinju, episodes 4 through 6. If you out there listening on a free would like to, again, get in and get these episodes as soon as they come out, or live stream along with us, then you can subscribe over at patreon.com/waruideshou. Get all kinds of great benefits. And if, you don't want to do that, again, valid, we love you too, it's cool. Just go to Apple Pods, give us a rating, give us a review, the 5-snake review. It will help our discoverability. Give us a like and subscribe on places like YouTube. Follow us on Twitter. We're on Spotify. We're on just about every platform that you can obtain the podcasts. Check us out there. And I think that's going to do it. Shadon, if people want to come through and talk to you about Rakugo, how would they do that?
Find me at Shadon1010 on Twitter.
And you can find me on Twitter at The Subtle Doctor. We can talk about this show. We can talk about other anime. We can talk about manga, tokusatsu, kaiju, video games, or sport, or really whatever you want to talk about. We're down to talk about mostly. But until next week, when we resume brand new Animal, episodes 7 through 9, this has been Shadon and the Subtle Doctor. We are waruideshou, saying, embrace each other, everyone, to the ends of the universe.
Good night.
Bring back the brothers.